Here I've created a couple of chip charts for myself so that I know what's going to happen when I use the color concentrates in a brushstroke format. And also on this one, I've done it on top of the black enamel and on top of the white. And I've also used these full strength straight from the jar. I recommend that you do this for yourself. It doesn't have to be quite this detailed, but it definitely helps so that you know what's going to happen when you use them on top of your glass and when you've capped them. Okay, now I'm going to show you how you can use color concentrates on your glass, directly on the glass. Up to this point, we've told you that you need to use them on top of your dried enamels. We started doing some testing, and these are some of the different techniques that I have found that are really exciting to work with. Okay, so I have this bowl here. You can see this. That has a wash background, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do. All of this decoration on this bowl was done with color concentrates. There is no enamels at all. This is a piece of white glass and a piece of clear. I've done all the painting on the white glass, and I'm going to demonstrate some of that for you. Okay, and then on this piece here, same difference. You can see this is one of those Look Ma no stands molds that you can make into a clock. I haven't drilled my hole yet. So this whole background here is all done with your color concentrates. And then what I've done is come back on the clear piece and I silk screened with our silk screen black, and on the back side of it I chose to fill in behind some of the different areas with the glass enamels. So I've combined enamels and the color concentrates on the back side. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this. So I have a piece of just white glass. I have not done anything to it other than clean it. We always clean our glass with distilled white vinegar. Okay, so what I've chosen here is CC 151 cerulean blue, 152 deep cerulean, and 161 green leaf, and 123 sunflowers. And then I've just got a glazed tile here, and I'm going to put some of each one of these out. I always start from light to dark, so I would consider my yellow light, the light cerulean is next, and then I'm going to come in with some green, and then the deep cerulean last, because that's my darkest color. Anytime you're using the color concentrates, always shake them up. They are a pure pigment in a gel base, so they tend to congeal. So shake them so they're nice and free and flowing and not stiff when you try to use them. Okay? And what I'm going to do here is just put out in a generous amount. Depends on how large your surface is and how much you want with the yellow on there. And you can see on this smaller one, what I'm going to do is come back and just randomly place some of the color where I want it. Okay, so I'm using just a soft mop brush. You could use the large sumi brush, you could use a small fan brush. These are natural hair brushes so that they allow the color to be deposited onto the piece. If they're a harsher hair like what you use for acrylics, they tend to scratch or pull that color off. So I'm just going to load that yellow up, turning it over multiple times, working the color into it. I want it to be generous. I want it to be able to go a long ways. And I like to hold my piece when I work on it. Okay, so just randomly place some of that yellow. If you were trying to create, a particular design, you may know exactly where you want it. But the goal is just to cover this whole area with the color concentrates. Of course, rinse that color out of your brush unless you have multiple brushes. Blot the moisture out, and let's go to our next color. As the concentrates dry on the glass, again, shake your bottle to make sure everything's flowing. As they dry, they tend to get hard on the glass, which is good because you don't want them to come off. Once again, fully load working that color in. It's kind of like shampooing your hair. You wouldn't just put the shampoo on the outside or just rub it across the top of your head and try to shampoo your hair. You've got to work that color just like you work shampoo into your hair. Think of it that way. That way you apply a nice, generous coat. And you're doing this wet on wet so that you can kind of blend those colors together if you choose to do so. So yellow and blue make a little bit of a green. And just keep working wherever you want that color. Back and forth. Like I said, it depends on, you could use one color. You don't have to use multiples. I just chose, and what I'm doing here, you see there's a little bit of a brush mark, so I'm barely touching that surface so that I can get rid of any kind of a marking that I don't like. I'm just going to work a little bit of that color out of my brush. If I were going into the deep cerulean, I could leave this one in, but I'm going into green next, so I do want to rinse. The reason I work some of that out onto the palette there, or the tile, is because you may need it and you don't want to waste your product by rinsing it out of your brush, and that way I can come back into that one if I choose to do so. Okay, so now I'm going to shake up the green. Don't need quite as much. I have less space to cover. Work the concentrate into. The color concentrates were designed to go on ceramic. It's a ceramic underglaze is what we use them for. And we started experimenting after using them to enhance the enamels and found that we were able to use them directly on the glass with precautions and get a really cool effect. And what's nice is they are cheaper than your enamels. I'm not saying don't use your enamels, but if you're limited, budget is limited, this might be another way that you can achieve different things. And if you've already got some of these, use them in a different way. Don't be afraid to experiment. Okay, once again, taking some of that out. Rinse that brush, blot all that water out of there, because if you have too much water, you can see that I have a little tiny droplet right there, so we'll have to kind of go back over that. It tends to diffuse. Now there's another technique. You could come in and mist on top of this and cause little tiny water droplet, and it would cause the color to run also. So there's a lot of different techniques, experimenting that you can do. Anytime you're using the concentrates, you do want to make sure the edge of your glass is completely cleaned. And I like to try to cut my glass just slightly larger, because if this is on the edge of your glass, see here, you need to clean all that off before you fire. It will not allow your glass to seal. Okay, so now I'm coming back in and just adding some of that darker color where I want it. And it can be just right, and just very, I'm just like tickling, just barely touching the glass. Maybe if I turn this sideways, you can kind of see that it's just ever so lightly. And it really depends on how heavy you want it and what the look is you're trying to achieve. So this is just kind of a, some of the colors do burn out. You need to, once again, make that chip chart to find out what happens when you cap this with clear. I can tell you that some of the purples go away, and in one of the other segments I'll show you my test strips that I did so that I know what colors to use, so I don't have to worry about something happening that I'm not aware of. Okay, so just play with this and get the effect. Great for backgrounds. You know, if you were doing a scene, you could do a background with this, or just a watercolor wash. And once again, let me show you this again. These are the different, so you can see the different effects that you can get. Okay, now this does need to dry before you can come back and do any other work on top of it, but if you were just decorating your other piece of glass, your clear glass, you could just go right on and let this dry and then do that. I'm going to touch this area up here just a little bit more. And then we are actually going to come back on top of this and do brush work with, in this particular one I use the black color concentrates. Okay? Alright, we're going to clean our edges, let it dry, and then I'll be back. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the brush work that's on here in the black onto our background that we did using just the pure color concentrates with the mop brush. We went back and forth starting from the light to the darkest color. Okay, so in order to do this, I've put my pattern, which looks like this, and I put this underneath my glass. Remember, this was clear, or excuse me, this was white glass. So I'm on a light board. And so what I want to do is take it to the highest setting, and I think you can see it on camera probably better than I can, where the flowers are. And what I've got here is just any color. It's a Staedtler, S-T-A-E-D-T-L-E-R Triplus fine liner. You want the fine liner one. And what I'm going to do is just make some dots where my center is, and maybe where my petals are, just to give myself some kind of a visual outline of where everything is at. Okay, so you'll want to do that. Then I have a leaf over here. Okay, so you would go through and do that on everything. What I'm going to work with is the leaves first, and we're going to use a square shader for those. And remember that this is our pattern that's underneath here. So if you need to have another one sitting beside you so that you can visually see what is what, okay? I'll move this up here out of the way. Okay, so the reason I'm doing my, just a quick lesson, the leaves first is because they're in the background, okay? So I want to do those first, and then I can do my brush work on top. You dampen your brush, and then what you want to do is drag it off the side of the bowl on both sides a couple of times. And then I like to keep the writing of the brush towards me so that I know I'm always corner loading in the same corner. Okay, so I'm going to move that back out of the way. I'm going to corner load in the black. Let me turn off the light so you can see that. Okay, so no more than half. And then what you want to do is blend on the tile, color next to color, so that when you take it to your piece, see the transition from dark to light? That's what we want. Because on our leaves, it's darker on the outside and lighter towards the middle. Okay? Alright. So I'm going to redo that, because if it sets any length of time, it's not going to be right. Writing the brush towards you, corner load, blend, flip it over, paint or color on top of color. And I want to do the leaves here. Press, 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 and come off. And you have to do this. I'm going to grab just a little bit of that color on the same side. Press, 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 and come off. Do you see how it starts to pick up the color? You can't piddle and do this. It has to be done very quickly. So this may or may not be the technique you want to use with this. This one I just used the silk screen, remember. So you don't have to do brush strokes, but I told you that I would show you a little bit, and so that's what I'm going to do here. Again, corner load, and I'll just do a couple examples. And this is just with a very, very light touch. If you need to pick it up, I do. And then you want to go down the other side. Okay, so that's like these two here. Okay, let's put it back down, turn on our light. Okay. And it doesn't have to be exactly, okay, I've got another one over here. Water load, drag off, corner, blend, blend, I like to do it a couple of times. Okay, let me move this out of the way. I'm going to turn so that we can see that leaf down here. Press, 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 and lift. A little bit more color. Sometimes I like to load for each side. Sometimes just one side. Okay. So, and if you need to, you know, you can always pick up your glass and see where your leaves are. So you've got one over here. So you've got one here and here. And we can always adapt the flowers to where they are. This is, like I said, just a little sampling of another way that you can decorate. Okay, so let's start over here. Okay. And I'm going to re-corner. I'm not going to reload with water because I think I have enough still in my brush. These could just be lines. They don't have to be this. This is called an M stroke or a wiggle stroke. And I'm being very, very light with my touch onto the piece because it's going to pull off the under color. And it really doesn't matter how long you've let it set. You start adding water to anything and it's going to come off. That's just the way it is. Okay, so there's another leaf right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish the leaves and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and finished those leaves so that you can see that. So there's different, we're going to do these smaller ones later after we do the line work. So now I'm going to use the 3600 number 2. It's a liner, and what you want to do is take some of your color. I'm going to show you this over here because once I turn on the light so that I can see what I need to do, you won't be able to see it. So just take some out away from your original and thin it down. And then draw your brush through it to coat all the hairs. Okay? Fully load that brush. If you tried to thin down the whole puddle, you would end up with a lake by the time you get it to the how thin you needed it. It would be huge amount, and it's going to dry out anyway, so I like to just pull out some and thin that and then just add more as I need to. Okay? Alright, and again, this is CC 101. I'm going to turn on the light now so that we can see. We have a center over here, and I'm just going to wave. Okay? Can you see that? Okay, now I'm going to go for the petals. So thick and thin. Thick and thin, basically what you're doing, create these that go off the page, is you're going to apply an amount of pressure that will cause thick and thin lines. Okay? And I think you can see this okay. I'm going to move the palette a little bit out of the way so that I can turn this. Okay. Ready? Thick and thin. Grab more color. This one needs to come up here into there. Now, there's little tiny lines, the stamens coming out. I like to do each flower as I'm working. That way I don't have the chance of coming back and possibly putting my hand in my work and ruining it. So let me turn the light off so you can see this. So I've just thinned it down just like we've been doing and pull from the center out. Try to make sure that those are different lengths, and I'm just putting like what I call little tick marks. You also need a few marks in your center off to one side, kind of in a C shape is what I like to do. Okay, I'm going to turn this. Generally, I would recommend pulling your strokes towards you. You have better control. Just some fine lines, different lengths. Come back and just kind of touch that brush on its side. Different lengths. touch. Okay, you can also go ahead and pull in your center vein and your side veins on your leaves if you want. Basically what we did with this stroke is create the veining. I do like to come back and actually outline. So with a very loose, it didn't have to follow the exact shape of that. Close to it, but not the exact. And then we'll add some curlicues and other leaves at the end. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I've got enough on my brush and just loosely outline that. That way you have two different values of black on there. And you can see on this one where you've had water in your brush, it's softer, and then you've got a bold outline with that. Okay. So if I were done with this section, let's say I usually just kind of freehand. You can come in and do your little curlicues. I did chip a piece off of my glass as I turned it over, but I saved that piece because I'll just fuse it together. Okay, let me show you the small leaves. Those are these. These are called wedge strokes. They're just one. It's the same stroke you were doing. We're just going to do it one time. Okay, so you're still going to water load, drag off the edge. Okay, writing towards you. You're going to corner. You're going to blend. And wherever you want the dark side, make sure that is the side where your color is. And you're just going to press and come off the chisel edge. I'll show you one over here. Press and come off the chisel edge. Okay. Wipe that off. Alright, so let's say that I want a set of 3 here. Press and come off, press and come off, press and come off. Rinse that brush. Come back with your liner brush, and you want to pull stems in for those. And I like to go down the side that did not have the black and define that. Okay? Alright, so let's turn this back on, and let's do this one here so you can see it, and then I'll finish it off camera. So wherever your center is, just a little wavy line, and then come in, press and lift, press and lift. Create interest by different thick and thin lines. Turn your work as you're working. Press and lift, press and lift, press and lift. Grab one over here. So what I did with that marker was I just kind of made me some dots to visually help me stay where my petals are. Press and lift, press and lift. So this is just a really simple and easy way. You could take any flower, any pattern. This just happens to be one that I used in a ceramic project, and I thought it would work really nice for this. Okay, very carefully I'm going to use my pinky to rest my arm, and then I'm just going to pull in those lines. Touch to the tip. You can even have more out here. Let me grab some more black. It's getting a little thin. Try to keep it the same consistency, same color value. Touch, 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 touch. Add a few extras. Okay. Continue to turn your work as you're working. It just makes it easier when you're pulling those strokes towards you. You have more control. Okay. A little bit of water. Thin that down. If it starts dragging on your brush strokes that you have underneath, your swiping or your wash, you need to thin it down a little bit more, or possibly you're running out of color that you had thinned. Okay, so stand up on the tippy toes. You don't want to get lazy with the brush. I'll turn this off. You don't want to lay your hand all the way down. You want to stand up with the brush slightly cocked back, just at a little bit of an angle, so that you can see where you're going, and you can also come off the tip. So let me show you the leaves while I've got the light off. So center vein, follow the shape that you've created with your other stroke to do your leaves. And then I just do a nice loose outline, center vein, side veins, follow those strokes, see that? And just a nice loose. I like a nice little tail on the end of mine. Let's go back over here and do this guy. Center vein, side veins. They don't have to be even on each side. It's better that you do odd numbers, 2 and 1, as opposed to 2 and 2. That's just a little design thing that I learned years ago. It makes for more interest. Okay, so that's, and then don't forget your center. And just come back and put some little dots of color. Now, could you do this in different colors? Absolutely. I just wanted monochromatic, meaning all one color on top of there, because you have all your color underneath, so you don't need to necessarily do green on the leaves. If you wanted to do a solid background and then do detail like that, you could. I encourage you to just experiment and see what you can come up with. Okay, so just make sure that your top glass is larger than this one that you're working on, just by a smidge, so that it will round off. Make sure your edges are free of any color concentrates when you're firing, and you also will need to sift clear powdered frit between these whenever you're getting ready to fire them. One of the things that you will notice, wherever the black is the heaviest, can see that, where it's heavier here, you tend to get more bubbles. Okay, I even got one pretty good size one right there. So keep that in mind. You do want to dilute the color. If you dilute it too much, you're going to get more gray as far as your value of color, but that's fine. It's still darker than your background. Okay, so then you can sign. If you like to sign your pieces, you can actually sign with the concentrates also. Okay, so I'm going to finish this, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so I've got those outlined and detailed, also my leaves. So now what I need to do is to fill in with some of these smaller leaves and do them in 3s or 1 here and there. Same thing, water load, drag off. You're going to corner load that brush again. Blend on your tile, color next to color, and we're going to just add some of those little leaves. Press and lift, press and lift, press and lift. We'll come back and pull in the detail and the stems to those. Fully load, blend. So maybe we want 1 here. Work from the design out. Don't try to start out and go in, because you're going to box yourself in and you're not going to have enough room to do what you're wanting to do. Okay, I'm going to turn it a little bit, reload. And this is just another way that you can decorate. You could use some of the stamping techniques, and you could stamp on the other piece of glass. Just have this as your background. That would work also. Don't limit yourself to what I'm showing you. Use your imagination. Your imagination is your limitation. There are so many things that can be done. Okay, Maybe another one here. And that looks good. All right. So now I'm going to use the liner brush. Take some of the same black, thin that down by adding water. Okay, and just start pulling in the stems. And like I said, I outline the side that doesn't have the color. So whichever side had the black on it, I go to the opposite side. And that kind of defines the leaf and the shape of it. And it also helps you clean up any edges. It's amazing what you can do with that. So you kind of got wiggly or wobbly, and you just need to see how that just defines that. Okay. Do these over here. I think you can see those. Okay. Now we need to add some curlicues. Some tendrils, just to make it interesting. And it also helps you fill in some of that space in the background. Don't forget to keep adding water and thin that down as it evaporates. You'll need to continually add some more water to that. And try to make them go in different directions. You don't want everything going the same way every time. Or you don't want it to have two loops every time. So be creative and add those. Okay, I think I want one right here. Okay. Alright, so that looks fairly balanced, except for down here. We need to add one. Okay, so then I need to find a place to put my name if you're going to sign this. And depending on what you're going to do with it, you need to think about how it's going to be shaped, whether your name is facing outward or inward. So that makes a big difference. For instance, on the bowl here, normally you would go this direction and write your name so you can read it from this way. But knowing this was going to be a bowl and going down in, I wanted to make sure my name was facing so that I could read it. So depending on what you were doing with this is just probably going to be a clock similar to what this one is. So it doesn't really matter where I put my name. So I think I'll just do it down here at the bottom. And this does take some practice. Just keep it nice and loose. And then I think I'll write the date. I'll put 2017, one of the last projects for the year. Okay. Make sure you've got your centers, make sure you've got your detail, make sure every leaf has an outline, a center vein. So just double check yourself, because the last thing you want is for this to go in the kiln and you've missed something. Okay, once again, you're going to sift clear powdered frit between this. Okay, I'm going to cap it with clear, and then I'm going to shape it the way I want. Okay, and that's that project. Okay, another way that you can use your color concentrates is you can take stickers, and then you can place them on your glass, and then use your concentrates over the top of them, so like a mask and peel. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate one of these for you. So what I've done is taken a piece of glass. This is clear, and I've used a variety of stickers. These are just some that I had. I believe 3mm thickness, they consider that to be It's as long as it's thicker. If it's too thin, it's going to just come off with you when you try to brush over the top of it. So I've just put a few of them down, and what I'm going to do is use Color Concentrate 112 Candy Apple Red and go over this to make more of an oriental type of a look. And then I'm going to back this with black glass. Or you can take, why don't we take clear glass and make a black glass, and then we'll stack the two and show you what it's going to look like. Okay, so once again, with your color concentrates, shake them. They do congeal. We've got quite a bit of an area to work here, so I'm going to put out a large amount. And I think I'll put a paper towel under this so that it can catch any overflow. Okay. And you've got all kinds of little tiny areas, so be aware of that when you're doing this. Make sure everything is really stuck down, so there's no gaps or air pockets that color could leak underneath. And again, I'm using the mop brush, fully loading, working that color into all those hairs, using it straight from the bottle. And what I want to do is just go across the top of it. Now this is going to be translucent because red is translucent. You could do red and black on this if you didn't want to try to back it with a particular color. That would work also. Make sure you really pay attention to those little tiny areas and get it down on there. Okay, get a little bit more color. Okay, just keep applying until you get it. It'll start to dry, and you might be able to get it a little bit heavier. Could you use a larger brush? Absolutely. This is just the one that I feel like I can control the best for this technique. It's just a oval mop. It's a white goat hair mop, meaning it's soft, and this is the 1/2 inch size. And we will have these on the website. Doesn't seem to be wanting to pick up in that area there, so I'm going to just kind of tap some of that color on there. Okay. And sometimes if you keep fussing with it, it ends up pulling it off. So we'll just let this set, and I'll come back and show you the next step.